Welcome to the Beyond Vision podcast, where we focus on the human side of advanced eye care. Join us in exploring the way we approach our collective pursuit of excellence. In each episode, we'll uncover the inspiring stories of how our vision, mission, and core values shape the way we love and care for each other and our patients. Hear from our passionate team and discover what sets Vance Thompson Vision apart in the world of advanced eye care.
Hello, my name is Sarah Dannen, today's host of the Beyond Vision podcast, a podcast at Vance Thompson Vision aimed to show you that we are more than patient care. We are here to enrich the lives of all those that we come in contact with. For those of you who are interested in vision care, we also have a companion podcast, Advanced Patient Care. So be sure to tune into that to learn all things about advanced eye care. I am honored today to have as my guest Dr. John Berdahl. He needs no introduction for most of you out there, but for those of you that don't know Dr. Berdahl, John, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so John Berdahl, I'm a small town kid, grew up in a town of 500 people, was a high school teacher for a year, so went to college at Augustana, was a high school teacher for a year between college and medical school. I like to say that I taught, I did teach math, but I like to say that I needed to do something easier than be a teacher, so I became an eye surgeon. Then I've bopped over to Mayo Clinic for medical school, did my internship at Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, did my residency at Duke, then fellowship in Minneapolis. But, I've got a beautiful wife that everybody likes, and I've got two wonderful kids that are great and talented. And, I guess if I was to summarize it in a sentence, I'd say if you would have given me a blank piece of paper 30 years ago and said, write your life story, I wouldn't have had the courage to write it as good as it is. Oh. So I love work, and I love getting to live life and do what we get to do. And there's some bumps there, and I hide the warts that we have to. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Awesome. When did eyes and ophthalmology come into that story?
So I had an appendectomy when I was in 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah.
And I thought I wanted to be an anesthesiologist after I saw the anesthesia bill. And so medicine was kind of on my mind. But then as I got older, I was pretty good at math and physics and science and really liked that stuff. Got a science scholarship to Augie, so had to have a science major, decided on physics, loved it, and thought I was going to be an engineer, but really wanted to work with people more, was going to be an optometrist. My family optometrist was trying to protect his noble profession of optometry from me and said, you should go to medical school and be an ophthalmologist. So I took that year and applied to medical school and deferred my acceptance to optometry school. That's the year that I ended up teaching high school. And boy, was that a formative year for me, teaching high school. And so that's kind of how I knew I was going to be an optometrist, because I wanted to do physics, math, optics, but work with people more. So then when I went to medical school, ophthalmology was the standard, and I compared everything else against that.
Nice. So from med school to residency to a fellowship, how and when did you cross paths with Dr. Thompson?
Well, Dr. Thompson's a pretty well-known guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want a piece of his time. So the third time I met him is the first time he thought he met me. So the very first time I followed him, I think it was the end of college, or maybe I was a first-year medical student. I watched Vance do LASIK, really cool. But what stuck out to me the most was a sign that he had in his laser suite that said, life is, let's see if I can get it right, it was Chuck Swindoll, but life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you make of it, and attitude matters. And that's, really the thing that stuck out to me. So that's the first time that I met him. I remember it. He doesn't, and he shouldn't. He's got a lot of people that follow him. The second time was, and this is a little bit of a funny story, I was in medical school, and the Final Four was in Minneapolis. And I won tickets to it because I couldn't afford it. And I was a big brother to this, young man that was a 7th grader and 8th grader, I think. And I invited him up to the finals. And he said he can't go because there's an 8th grade dance. And I said, as your mentor and big brother, I gotta tell you, you're making a huge mistake. You should go to the NCAA finals, not to the dance. He chose the dance. I and a friend went up, happened to be sitting a couple rows behind Vance. Introduced myself.
Yeah.
But then the first time that he would really remember is that we met together at the American Academy of Ophthalmology. And that was because Matt Jensen, who was our CEO at the time, he was a year behind me in college, and I had gotten a fun little award called the Resident Writers Award, which, you know, some other of the young docs that we have here won. Tanner, I know for sure, is one of them. Maybe there's another one. And so Matt was looking through Ophthalmology Times, saw this big picture of me, spit out his coffee. I was doing a fellowship with Dick Lindstrom, Tom Samuelson, Dave Hardin, Liz Davis up in Minneapolis. And so he said, you know, we should try to recruit John. So we had a dinner at American Academy of Ophthalmology, and Vance would say, I'll never forget the first time we met at the American Academy of Ophthalmology. And I knew right then we were meant to be together. And we were meant to be together. And so then he proceeded to recruit me a little bit. Turns out my grandma was a very important, faith-based spiritual leader for he, and maybe even more importantly, his wife Jana through the church.
Yeah.
And she's my hero, probably my biggest hero in life, but it's certainly in the top 5. And so, you know, Vance does a really good job of making a convincing argument. So he took a selfie of himself with my grandma at church and said, your grandma wants you to do her cataract surgery, and she's not willing to travel more than 70 miles, so it looks like you have to join me. That's what sealed the deal. I joined him. No kidding, 7 months later, I'm doing my grandma's cataract surgery. I remember it, and there's 2 things I remember. Number 1 was that I did it exactly the same way as I did the person before that, and that made me convinced that I treat people the way that I treat my family, my most important family members. Number 2 was that afterwards we did an astigmatism fixing lens on her, a toric lens. And she said, I have never seen the Sea of Tranquility on the moon this well. And it's my exactly the kind of thing my grandma would say.
That's awesome. So Vance took a risk on you, and from getting to know you from working here over the past 3.5 years, you're sort of a risk taker.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I think if I was to be really honest about that, I think it came from a couple of things. One is that, I had a mom and dad that loved me, but they were pretty hands-off, and I kind of had to take care of myself a little bit. And so I think that I got confident in taking care of myself and my own thinking. The other one, I didn't realize at the time, and this is a little personal, but that's cool. So I got drunk for the first time when I was a 7th grader.
Wow.
And I quit drinking the summer before my junior year of high school. And I just wasn't sure that I was in charge of it. And so I said, I need to make sure that I'm in charge of it. So I quit the summer before my junior year. And then faith became a more real part of my life shortly after that. And I kind of made a promise that I was never going to get drunk again. And that I wasn't going to drink through high school until I was 21. So I got through the rest of high school, got through till I was 21, didn't drink on my 21st birthday, and just said, I have fun. And I wasn't like judgy, or I wasn't like not hanging out with friends. And then, now I'll have a drink or two, but haven't been drunk since July 5th, the summer before my junior year. And the reason I tell that long story is because I got very comfortable not doing the same thing as everyone else around me, while still being able to interact with everybody else around me in a fun, hopefully good way. And so I really came to hear what other people had to say, but trust myself and trust my own thinking. And once I don't think I would have predicted that would be the case, but that's what's, I think, led me to say, okay, I think some of these research ideas that I've had along the way, or some of these companies we've started, I trust me. I don't need other people to say, yes, you can, or no, you shouldn't do that. If I think through it, I believe, and will go after it on my own.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get to that kind of risk-taking and entrepreneurial spirit here in a second. But at Vance Thompson Vision, in all of our interviews, we have all our new candidates watch the Simon Sinek video about your why.
Yeah.
What's your why?
To deliver on the trust that people put in me.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it took me probably about 3 months to get it to that articulation. But it is, that's what it is. If people put their trust in me, and I allow them to put their trust in me. It's not like they can just say, hey, you have to do this for me. But if I allow somebody to put their trust in me, like a patient, like a partner, like an employee, like my family, kids, wife, spouse, if I don't deliver on that trust, I'm achy on the inside. And if I do, the world's spinning the right way. So that's what the filter that I put every big decision through.
Oh, that's awesome. So speaking of big decisions and that kind of risk-taking and entrepreneurial spirit, I kind of want to kind of shift the focus or our talk now to that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that's within you. And you've started a couple companies, some good, some bad. Where does that kind of drive, and where did that kind of come from?
Yeah, I think it came from that same place of getting confident in my own thinking and my own belief, and the fact that I'll do the work, because I'll do the work.
Yeah.
I'll grind if I need to, and if you're going to start a company, you need to grind. And maybe the other thing I didn't say is I've always had a sense of wonder, and I feel great when I am filled with wonder. Looking at the stars, thinking about physics and modern physics. But also, when you look at the eye, the eye is a place where you can see, the only place you can see the nervous system directly. It's the only place that you can see an individual red blood cell going through a little capillary. You can see muscle directly without any skin covering it. That's your iris. And when you dive into the eye, it's like diving into a world that other people don't get to see. And I just hope I never lose that sense of wonder. So I've always had this curiousness. So if you combine curiousness with confidence and work, then you have an idea and you go for it. And so that's how it got there.
So it got there, and a couple companies have been born from that curiosity and that wonder and that hard work. I know one of them was Equinox. Tell the audience a little bit about where that idea came from.
Yeah, sure. I'll zoom back. So I'm a first-year resident at Duke. We get one vacation a year. My wife and I went on a cruise together, like inside cabin, $259 for the week, each person, all you can eat food, the cheapest cruise line. It was great. We went scuba diving. And when I was 30 feet down in the scuba dive, I was thinking, how much pressure is on my eye? Because if you came in and had a pressure of 70 millimeters of mercury, I'd drill a hole in your eye within an hour to try and save your vision. But if you go down scuba diving just 30 feet, you've added 760, not 70 millimeters of mercury, and that didn't add up to me. So instead of enjoying the vacation and
annoying your wife
and annoying my wife, I was thinking about, how does this work? How is it possible that the eye tolerates that? And I came to believe that what really matters is a pressure differential between the pressure inside your eye and the other pressures in your body, specifically CSF pressure, cerebral spinal fluid, which is the fluid that bathes the brain, also known as intracranial pressure. So you have intraocular pressure, intracranial pressure. And if the intraocular pressure is high or the intracranial pressure is low, either way there's a pressure differential there, and that's what I came to believe caused the disease. So I went back to Mayo Clinic and came back to Duke. They said, hey, yeah, we're willing to allow you to go study this. So I went and studied it, and we found that indeed it is almost certainly true. I mean, there's been 500 papers now or so that have cited it. They've taken monkeys that had normal eye pressure, lower their CSF pressure, and they get glaucoma. And so that's a big deal, because glaucoma is the second leading cause of blindness in the world. Fundamentally, we didn't know or don't know what it is. And if it's fundamentally this and redefining the second leading cause of glaucoma, that matters.
Big deal.
So then I go to fellowship, and Dick Lindstrom's there, and he's the king of ophthalmology, and I'm going to present this story to him, and I do, and I say, what do you think? He says, I think you're right. What are you going to do about it? And I said, what do you mean, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to be famous and people are going to think I'm smart. Isn't that what we do about it? And he said, well, I'd rather see, a scientific advancement actually help people and maybe even turn it into a company. I said, I don't have any good ideas. He said, that's okay. Opportunity favors the prepared mind. So fast forward about 6 years later, I've already annoyed my wife once by not enjoying our vacation. I'm reading an article where they're talking about astronauts losing vision on the International Space Station. And I think I know why. And so I wake up my wife to tell her that I think I know why. And she says, you aren't as smart as you think you are. You just woke me up to tell me how smart you are.
Yeah.
And touche, she's right. So anyway, it turns out that in space, about 50% of astronauts on long-term space flight are losing vision. Well, why does that happen? It's probably, in my view, because in space you don't have gravity pulling all your fluids down towards your feet. Mm-hmm. So your cerebral spinal fluid, your intracranial fluids, they go from your head down to the bottom of your spine, and they fill your spinal cord and around your brain. And so gravity pulls those down, but in space there's no gravity, so they redistribute up. So your pressure in your brain at eye level is higher than your eye pressure, and now it's the opposite of glaucoma and things are bowing forward. And so I email the highest person I can find at NASA, say, hey, I'm John from South Dakota, I think that I can help. No kidding, they returned my email the next day. I get invited to be on the Vision for Mars team. And then Vance and I are sitting in the office kind of ping-ponging ideas back and forth. And, what if, he was saying, well, what if we just put them in a pressurized room? And I'm like, well, that's going to pressure the brain and the eye together, or a helmet, same thing. But then came up with the idea that, hey, if we could put a pair of goggles on, that would only change the pressure in the eye and not in the brain. And so, it was a meaningful moment. And so then thought, okay, well, if we can put positive pressure on the eye to raise the eye pressure for astronauts, couldn't we do negative pressure and lower the eye pressure by taking the atmospheric weight off the eye? So we did some initial studies, and it turns out that that was true. And so that was our journey to be the first non-drug, non-surgery way to take care of glaucoma and lower eye pressure. So we started a company. And the good news about people that start companies is that they don't know how painful it is. Because otherwise people wouldn't do it, and we wouldn't have new companies, new technologies, because that mountain is high and it's hard and it punches you in the face a lot. And so, but we took a step-by-step approach, and we did every step and did good science, and ultimately we still got denied by the FDA.
And that company was Equinox.
That company was called Equinox. Pair of goggles to lower eye pressure for glaucoma, maybe someday help raise eye pressure to treat astronauts. And that company ultimately failed, along with the tens of millions of dollars of investment put in that company by people that trusted me. And so I failed.
That's hard for you. You don't fail at a lot of things.
It was hard. And I probably fail at more things than people know, but not very visible ones and not very big ones. And this was a big, visible failure across the industry of ophthalmology. For our investors, probably the thing that was the hardest on me was the team that did, they gave us the best hours and the best weeks, the best years of their life to try and accomplish this thing. And our data was good, and the FDA wanted longer term data. Well, ultimately that company failed. I bought it back out of bankruptcy.
If I know you, though, can I pause there for a minute?
Sure.
If I know you, you probably sat with that failure for a bit and thought about it. And as you thought about it, what were like the musings or the learnings that you took from what you learned?
Oh, there's so much. So as I'm sitting there in this failure, one, I gotta say, my wife was amazing. You have to manage you, but everybody's going to have a crisis of confidence. And there were a few people, my wife being chief among them, that helped bridge that crisis of confidence. So there's so many things. One, am I actually right? I still believe that this works. I still believe that. Am I right? Is it possible to resurrect this? What if I fail again?
Yeah.
What if I fail again for investors? Because some people invested in the first one, lost, and they still invested in me the second time. And so hose me once, shame on me, or shame on you, hose me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
And so all of these things are going through my mind around what does failure look like again, and what do I believe, and am I, the right person, and all of this stuff. And ultimately, the decision came down to this. And you know what? Maybe one other piece of advice. I talk to my kids about it a lot in a very real way. And they had some of the best advice of anybody. They just cut through it.
Yeah.
And we're talking millions of dollars, and they're like, I'm 15 years old. But they could cut through a lot of the political noise that we do. And ultimately, the decision was made is that I can't put my head on the pillow at night unless I try, because I think that we were 3rd and 17 and we quit. And I just can't live. You can kill me, but I'm not going to quit.
Yeah.
And so that's how we did it. So bought it back out of bankruptcy, raised a bunch of money, had new longer-term data FDA hadn't seen yet. And we asked for an FDA panel of 13 experts, which is kind of the highest level of scrutiny that the FDA provides, and it's live streamed and all the world can see it for all of eternity, and it was the most prepared I've ever been for anything, and I believed that we had the data, and at that panel we won 13-0, and the panel agreed and the FDA approved, and now we've got an FDA approved product that is the first non-surgical, non-drug way to lower eye pressure, and it works in patients whose pressure starts off lower, which is a very vulnerable group because they're hard to treat in the first place. And so so as I look, we still haven't created a successful business.
Right.
We've created a FDA approved product that we believe can help patients, and now the next step is to create a successful business that can sustain and continue to help these patients. But when I look back on that, I learned that you don't know how close you are to the finish line. And ever. And so if you're gonna quit, you've failed.
Yeah.
But if you don't quit, you haven't failed yet. There's failures along the way. You have to call them what they are. Don't
sugarcoat it.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned when I would tell people that I failed is that it makes some people very uncomfortable to hear you say that. And it's usually people that like to spin things. But the warriors, the people that are in the arena, they don't say that. They say, man, you did.
I screwed up.
And it's hard. So the people that are in the arena, I think that they get it. And you wouldn't see a professional football player saying, hey, I know you lost that game, but you didn't really lose it. You learned so much.
Yeah.
And that's a win. That's not it. It was a failure. I think a lot of us, me included, believe that we've got grit, but it proved to me that I do, or at least I did in that moment. And there's a lot of people that understandably weren't happy about things, and that's a reality of it. And so that's why that confidence in your own thinking and your own belief in you is the thing that can pull it through.
Yeah. So we might have some young entrepreneurs out there that have that kind of idea nagging in the back of their head, or have been waiting to take that jump or that risk or believe in themselves. If you were going to give them advice, what advice would you give them today?
The first thing that I would do is I would say, is this a problem that you can't stop thinking about? if you can't stop thinking about it, then you might have a shot at giving it enough effort to get it across the line someday.
Yeah.
But if it's kind of just a passing thought in those moments where you're going to inevitably get punched in the face, you got to say, I have to do this. I can't shake this idea. I know it's good.
Yeah.
So I'd start there. I would say that if the entrepreneur is a doc or scientifically minded, the thing that I learned is you have to have that, but you have to have the business side of it too. Either you need to go and...
That doesn't come naturally to everybody.
No, you have to either go and buy that from somebody, or you have to develop that. In my case, it was probably both, and I was lucky enough to have some of the best people in the world that did the business side and the doctor side, helping give me advice early. And so you have to have confidence in yourself. I quoted Dick Lindstrom earlier, I'll quote him again. He's the godfather, but he would say, well, John, this is your decision to make. I'm just giving you advice. And if you're just making your decisions because other people told you to, or hiding behind a consultant or whatever, I just don't think you're going to get there. It has to be you pulling the team through to get there. So don't underestimate the business side of it. Do good science. Understand your market.
Nice. I love it. Well, now I'm switching a little to kind of the fun side of things. I know for a fact that one of your favorite interview questions that you like to ask people is to, can you teach me something?
Yeah.
So putting you on the spot to see if you can teach our listeners something, or if not,
I can.
Another option would be, what was the best thing someone has taught you in one of those interviews?
I'll answer both.
Oh, okay.
First one was recently, maybe not the best, but the most top of mind, is somebody was doing a mock interview for medical school, and she said that we never have met someone that's not extraordinary. And so, and what that really did is stop me in my tracks about how valuable it is to just be a human, to be created. And you've never met, and is actually, I think, said this way, you've never met an ordinary person.
Yeah.
So that was probably the best thing that I've learned in one of those questions. The thing that I would teach, oh boy, there's so much. I'll start with this. Do you know why it's called the dark side of the moon?
I do not know why it's called the dark side of the moon.
So the dark side of the moon is the side that's always facing away from Earth. So it turns out that the moon's day, how long it takes to spin on its axis, is exactly the same amount of time as the moon's year, the amount of time it takes to go around the Earth.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
So exactly the same, roughly 30 days. So what happens then is that it rotates as it revolves around the Earth, and that means the same side always faces the Earth. So we've never seen the backside of the moon. That's why they call it the dark side of the moon, even though it's not always dark. Sometimes the sun's shining on it. We've never seen it from Earth, and nobody had ever laid eyes on it until the Apollo 8 mission. And so that's where the phrase the dark side of the moon comes from.
Interesting. So now we all learned something new today.
There you go.
Okay, and then we like to end every podcast with a this or that.
Oh, good.
Yep. Water or mountains?
Water.
Nikes or Adidas?
Nikes.
Shoes or no shoes in the OR?
No shoes.
Kombucha or tequila?
Ooh, kombucha for sure, but okay, so if I'm going to have a drink, an extra aged tequila is probably my favorite. But I have a kombucha every night because I don't drink that much.
Yeah.
But I do like something that's like slows it down, signals the end of the day. I don't want it to be alcohol. And so I'll give a couple of hot tips. My favorite tequila is Cava de Oro.
Mm-hmm. Very good, by the way.
Extra añejo. And my favorite kombucha is by a company called Synergy, and it's elderberry juniper.
Nice.
And it's a little taste of the mountains.
I love
So
it.
those are my faves.
Okay, one more. Snow skiing or wake surfing?
Wake surfing, just because I like wake surfing.
Nice. Well, thank you for your time today and your wisdom and all that you shared, from risk-taking to entrepreneurship to great kombucha. It's a pleasure and an honor, as always, to get to spend this time with you, and I hope you all learned something new and can take something home from this. Thank you for tuning in to the Beyond Vision podcast, and until next time.
My pleasure. Thank you.